As I walked away, the anger inside me simmered, but I remained composed. I told myself I wasn't going to stoop to her level. But as I turned the corner and walked deeper into the neighborhood, something inside me clicked. I wasn't just going to let this slide. I'd dealt with my fair share of rude people, but the way Karen had treated me, over something as simple as walking down a street, felt different. It felt personal. It wasn't just about her thinking she was better than me. It was about her disrespecting me for no reason. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her and what had happened. I replayed the incident over and over in my head. Every time I thought about her tossing my idea at me, it made my blood boil. But there was a bigger picture here. This wasn't just a random encounter. Karen wasn't just some entitled neighbor with a chip on her shoulder. She was a person in a position of power, and that's what worried me the most. It made me wonder how many others she treated this way. How many people had she stepped on to get to where she was? As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I started to dig into Karen's life. I wasn't planning to stalk her, but I had to know more. I spent a few hours researching, and what I discovered stunned me. Karen was no ordinary resident of our neighborhood. She was the owner of the mansion I had passed, and it wasn't just any mansion. It was a multi-billion-dollar property. But the real kicker? She was in the process of selling it for $7 billion. That's right, $7 billion. Karen's mansion wasn't just a home. It was a symbol of her status and wealth. The deal was already underway, and the buyer, one of the wealthiest people in the world, was ready to close. If this deal went through, Karen would make an enormous fortune and solidify her place among the elite. I couldn't help but wonder, what kind of person tosses someone's idea over a trivial issue when they have everything in the world at their fingertips? As the days passed, I kept thinking about Karen and her upcoming sale. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was an opportunity here, an opportunity to get back at her, not in a petty way, but in a way that would make her truly feel the consequences of her actions. I knew this deal was a massive one, and I had a unique advantage. I worked in real estate. I had the knowledge and experience to exploit the flaws in such deals, and I wasn't afraid to use it. I found out that Karen's $7 billion mansion deal had some legal loopholes. The property wasn't as clean as she had led the buyer to believe. There were discrepancies in the property's title deed and a few unresolved zoning issues that could cause serious delays. At first, I hesitated. I knew that messing with someone's multi-billion-dollar deal could have major consequences. But then I remember how she had treated me, the anger I felt when she tossed my idea aside, and I realized that this was more than just a chance for revenge. It was about standing up for myself and putting an end to her sense of entitlement. The next day, I made a call to the city's real estate registry. I knew exactly how to maneuver the system, how to file a complaint that would trigger an investigation into the discrepancies. I didn't do anything illegal. I just knew how to apply enough pressure to make the sale much harder for her to finalize. It wasn't personal. It was about balance, about giving her a taste of her own medicine. To my surprise, within hours of filing the complaint, I got wind of some pretty serious developments. Karen's legal team was scrambling. They couldn't ignore the issues I had raised. The buyer started asking questions. The deal, which had been on the verge of closing, was now at risk of falling apart. The pressure started mounting, and Karen's perfect world was starting to crumble. The next day, I got a call from an associate in the real estate world. He told me that the buyer had pulled out. He was no longer interested in buying the mansion. The deal was officially canceled, and Karen's $7 billion sale was a thing of the past. It was as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I had done it. I had taken the power back. But what struck me the most was how quickly everything had unraveled. Karen, the woman who thought she could throw my idea aside and treat me like dirt, had just lost everything. Her mansion, the deal, the fortune, all gone, just like that. It was more than just a victory for me. It was a reminder that sometimes people who think they can push others around get what's coming to them. Karma works in mysterious ways, and when someone treats you with contempt, it's only a matter of time before the tables turn. I didn't need to say a word to Karen after all that. She probably never even realized the role I played in bringing her down. But I knew, and that was enough. This experience taught me that no matter who someone is or how powerful they seem, no one is untouchable. Sometimes, all it takes is one quiet act of revenge to level the playing field. As for Karen, well, she's probably still out there, wondering why her mansion deal fell apart. But me? I'm just glad I got to walk away knowing I made sure she would think twice before treating someone else like she treated me. So, the next time someone disrespects you, remember, you don't always need to retaliate with force. Sometimes the most powerful move is the quiet one. And who knows, you might just find a way to turn the tables when they least expect it. As the days passed after my encounter with Karen, I couldn't help but think about how everything had unfolded. What kind of person just tosses someone's idea aside and treats them like dirt over something as trivial as walking past their property? It wasn't just a simple outburst. It was a sign of arrogance and entitlement. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there was a much bigger picture at play. This woman wasn't just any neighbor. She was involved in something much more significant than I could have imagined. I started hearing whispers around the neighborhood. People were talking about Karen and her mansion. As I pieced the information together, I was shocked. Karen wasn't just an affluent neighbor with a sprawling estate. No, she was deep into the middle of one of the biggest real estate deals in history, a deal worth $7 billion. And that wasn't just some flashy number thrown around for show. This was the real deal, a multi-billion-dollar sale of her mansion to one of the wealthiest individuals in the world. At first, I thought I must have misunderstood. $7 billion? That's almost unfathomable. But it turned out that Karen's mansion wasn't just some luxurious home. It was an estate built for a billionaire. The place had everything anyone could ever dream of. An indoor pool, a state-of-the-art personal movie theater, acres of land that stretched as far as the eye could see, and even a helipad for when the owner wanted to come and go in style. It was the kind of property you see in magazines, the kind of place you only dream of owning. And Karen, she was about to make an eye-watering fortune from the sale. But what Karen didn't realize was that I wasn't just some random person in the neighborhood. I wasn't just someone she could brush off like I was nothing. I had experience in the real estate world. And not just any experience. I knew how these billion-dollar deals worked. I knew the ins and outs, the legal requirements, and I had a solid understanding of the entire process. What Karen didn't know was that I had already seen this kind of deal unravel before. I'd watched wealthy people attempt to sell or buy properties with serious issues buried beneath the surface, issues that could derail an entire transaction. When I learned about her $7 billion deal, something clicked. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. I wasn't going to sit idly by and let Karen get away with treating me like she did. Sure, I wasn't going to get involved in her business directly, but this was my opportunity to do something that could teach her a lesson she'd never forget. I had a chance to hit her where it would hurt, her wallet. The idea of helping her get her mansion sold and walking away with millions, all while acting like she could toss people around like they were nothing, just didn't sit right with me. The more I looked into Karen's sale, the more I realized that her deal wasn't as solid as she thought. There were discrepancies in the land ownership records. I dug a little deeper and found out that the title for the property wasn't as clear as it should have been. There were also issues with the permits related to the mansion's construction. I didn't need to be a legal expert to see that these were major problems. In a deal worth billions of dollars, something like this could bring everything to a screeching halt. And there was more. The mansion had been through several owners over the years, and the property's history was littered with unanswered questions. I knew the buyer wouldn't want to deal with any of this. Billionaire buyers don't like problems. They want smooth transactions and guarantees that everything is above board. The last thing they want is a complex, messy legal situation with a property they're about to invest in. I had all the ammunition I needed. Karen's $7 billion deal was on shaky ground, and I knew exactly how to exploit it. I wasn't going to go public with this information. I wasn't going to ruin her business or career. No, I was going to play it smarter. I knew exactly what had to be done to disrupt the sale, to delay the process enough to make her buyers reconsider their interest. It was a subtle move, but it would have devastating consequences for her deal. The real estate registry was my next stop. I didn't do anything illegal. I didn't fabricate documents or make false claims, but I did know how to make sure the right people were alerted to the discrepancies I had discovered. I filed a complaint, pointing out the unresolved issues with the land ownership records and the permits that had been improperly handled. I made it clear that these were serious concerns that could take weeks, if not months, to clear up. I wasn't making any outrageous claims. I was simply making sure that those in charge knew about the potential legal issues. Once the complaint was filed, I waited, and I wasn't surprised when things started to unravel. The next thing I knew, Karen's legal team was scrambling to deal with the fallout. The buyer's team started questioning the legitimacy of the sale, and the entire process began to stall. The clock was ticking, and every hour that passed made it less likely the deal would go through as planned. I could already hear Karen's office calling frantically, trying to salvage the situation, but by then, the damage was done. The buyer started backing away, citing all the issues that had been raised. And just like that, the entire $7 billion deal began to fall apart. Karen was about to lose everything, and the best part was that she didn't even know who was behind it. She thought she could disrespect me without consequences, but now, she was facing the consequences of her own arrogance. It felt like sweet justice, and I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes, people get exactly what they deserve. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction as I watched everything unfold. I hadn't confronted Karen directly. No, that would have been too easy, too predictable. Instead, I had used my expertise in real estate to dismantle her carefully constructed empire, bit by bit, without her even realizing who was behind it. And the best part? It was completely legal. I didn't break any rules. I just knew how to play the system, and I played it well. When I filed that complaint at the city's real estate registry, I didn't expect things to move as quickly as they did. I was being discreet, almost surgical in my approach. I didn't need to make a big fuss. A small, well-placed complaint would be enough to stir up the right kind of attention. But within hours, I saw the dominoes start to fall. Karen's legal team was frantically calling all the right people, trying to smooth things over, make promises, do whatever it took to fix the problems I had highlighted. At first, it seemed like they might be able to work things out, but it wasn't long before I started hearing rumors that the buyer, the man who was about to purchase Karen's $7 billion mansion, was having second thoughts. This buyer wasn't just any person. He was one of the wealthiest men in the world, someone with vast resources, but more importantly, someone with the connections to make sure his investments were safe. When he heard about the discrepancies in the paperwork, the unresolved legal issues with the property, and the potential for months of back and forth, he started to reconsider the whole deal. He wasn't going to risk $7 billion on a mansion that had legal holes big enough to drive a truck through. So, the deal started to unravel. The buyer was pulling away, and I couldn't help but feel a rush of adrenaline. I had set the wheels in motion, and now I was watching them turn. It wasn't long before Karen's world came crashing down. The legal team was scrambling, trying to come up with solutions, but the buyer wasn't biting. The problem wasn't just the paperwork. It was the uncertainty surrounding the property. Billionaire buyers like him want guarantees. They want to know that when they're purchasing something worth billions, there's no chance of a deal falling apart because of paperwork or legal red tape. And Karen couldn't provide that certainty. I wasn't about to let her off the hook so easily either. I knew what Karen had done. I knew how she had treated me that day, how she tossed my idea aside like I was nothing. I had seen this kind of arrogance before. People who think they can treat others however they want because they have money and power. But what Karen failed to realize was that money doesn't buy everything. It doesn't buy respect. It doesn't buy kindness. And in the end, it didn't buy her the deal she was so desperately holding on to. Then came the kicker. The buyer pulled out of the deal completely. Just like that, everything she had worked for, the mansion, the status, the wealth, was gone. Her $7 billion mansion deal evaporated in front of her eyes. The dream she had been so close to achieving, the one that would have catapulted her into an even more exclusive stratosphere, slipped through her fingers. It wasn't just a financial loss, it was a public one too. Word spread quickly. People started talking about the failed deal, and I knew it wasn't just a setback for Karen. It was a blow to her reputation. No one wants to be the person who loses out on a $7 billion deal due to avoidable issues. As the news reached Karen, I could imagine the shock and disbelief she must have felt. After all, she had everything: the mansion, the buyer, the power, and yet it had all slipped away. I knew that the whole situation had to be eating her alive. She had looked down on me, tossed my idea aside, treated me like I was beneath her. But now, she was the one who was beneath me. I hadn't needed to shout, to cause a scene, or to go toe-to-toe with her. I had used my knowledge, my quiet intelligence, and my understanding of how things work behind the scenes to outsmart her at her own game. And you know what? I couldn't have been happier. There was no satisfaction quite like knowing that someone who had treated me like dirt had lost it all. Karen's sense of superiority had been her downfall, and I had been one to show her just how quickly things can change when you treat others with disrespect. It was the sweetest form of revenge, not because I had done anything malicious, but because I had used my smarts to turn the tables. Karma, in all its glory, had finally worked its magic. The universe has a funny way of righting wrongs, and for Karen, it came at a steep price. She had thought she could push me around, that she could get away with her entitled behavior. But in the end, it was her own arrogance that caused her to lose everything she had been working so hard to achieve. Sometimes, life has a way of teaching people lessons they'll never forget. And sometimes, it's the quiet ones who have the power to change the course of events with just a little bit of knowledge and a lot of patience. Karen learned that the hard way.